today's session. My name is Harjit Sandhu, and I am a registered migration agent here at Aussies Group. Today, I will be talking about the parent visa and other long-term options for parents to stay here in Australia. Now, parents visa, basically there are two broad categories in which we can divide the parent visa. One, contributory parent visa. The other one is non-contributory parent visa. Now, obviously, as the name suggests, contributory parent visa is where the applicant has to, they are required to make a large financial contribution so that they can, offset the cost of future health and welfare services. So we'll talk about all these options in detail. First of all, just to introduce the names of the visas and the subclasses. There are offshore parent visas for the parents who are less than the retirement age. The retirement age is 67 plus years. So, contributory parent visa, as I said, there are certain subclasses. 173, which leads to 143, which is a permanent option. 173 is a temporary visa, and 143 is a permanent option. Similarly, for aged parent visas, there is an option from temporary to permanent, and then there is also one option where they can directly apply for the permanent visa. The temporary to permanent one is 884, and the permanent one is 864. So it's up to the applicants whether they want to, first apply for the temporary visa, and then in the second stage apply for the 864. Obviously, the visas where there are two stages, they cost more. Whereas if they opt to go for 864 directly, they end up paying slightly less than the two-stage visa. Then we also have non-contributory parent visas. The non-contributory parent visas are less expensive, but there are only limited places, and there is capping and queuing on parent visas. Now the subclass is 103 for offshore permanent visa, and for the onshore aged parent visa, it's 804. Now we'll talk about all these visas in detail, but this is just to introduce you to the main categories and their numbers and names. All right. Now, today the main objective is to discuss about the long-term stay options for the parents, how the parents can come to Australia and stay here for a longer period of time. The most common visa is visitor visa 600, where if they get a grant for long-term, like 3 years, they can stay here for 12 months out of the 18 months period. For some parents, it's very difficult for them to travel again and again, so they opt to stay here longer. So there is an option where they can go for a sponsored parent visa, and the subclass is 870. Now, in this visa, there is no need to meet the family balance test. What is family balance test basically? So family balance test is that the applicants sponsor the children who are sponsoring the parents. They should be, first of all, they should be permanent residents or citizens of Australia, and the applicants, 50% of the children should be in Australia. So, for example, if the applicant have 2 kids, then if one of them is an Australian citizen or permanent resident, they can sponsor their parents, and this means that they meet the family balance test. However, if, for example, the parents have 3 children, and 2 of those kids stay, let's say, for example, in India or in Canada or US or somewhere, and only 1 child is here in Australia, then they don't meet the family balance test. So in these situations, 870 is the best option, because for this visa, they don't really have to meet the family balance test. Now, this visa allows the parents to stay in Australia for 3 or 5 years. the sponsor or the child who is sponsoring for the application, they must meet the income test. So there is a there's a cap of $83,454. So their annual income must meet this or exceed this number. They can include their, let's say, for example, the sponsor does not meet the income taxable income of 83,000 plus. Then they can include their spouse's income as well. So together they can sponsor the parents. Now, obviously, this is a temporary visa. This does not allow the parents to work. They can stay continuously for 3 years or for 5 years, depending on which visa option they choose to go with. They will get the visa with multiple entries. So if they want to travel overseas, they can go offshore and come back on this visa. They don't need to apply for a bridging visa or anything. So once the visa is granted, they can travel overseas as well. Or if they choose to stay here in Australia, they can stay continuously for 3 to 5 years. All right, the sponsorship requirements. So as I already explained earlier, the sponsor child must be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. The parents that they are going to sponsor must be either their biological parents or step parents, so they can sponsor them. Now they must meet the income requirement, as I mentioned earlier. They also need to meet the character requirements, and to lodge the 870 visa, the applicant must first, by applicant I mean the sponsor, the person who is sponsoring the parent. They must have to first get their sponsorship approved. Only after the sponsorship is approved that the subclass 870 application can be lodged. So it's a two-step process. First, the sponsorship has to be approved, and then the application is lodged. And once the application is, once the visa is granted, that is when the period of 3 years or 5 years will start. So for the sponsorship, the parents can be in Australia or offshore. However, when the 870 application is lodged, at that time, the parents cannot be in Australia on a visitor visa. They have to be offshore, unless they are exempted. All right, so, all right, you must be wondering what documents are required for 870 visa. Now, for sponsors' personal documents, they must provide their ID documents like their passport, national ID, such as driving license and all that, to prove that they're residents of Australia. They also need to provide the ATO notice of assessment to prove that they meet the income test. Also, they would require to provide, if they are using their spouse's income, then they will also have to provide that they are legally married or in a relationship with that spouse that they're using the income with. Besides this, as I said, they also have to meet the character requirements. So Australian Federal Police check is required at the sponsorship stage. So those are the main important documents that are required. Other than that, the applicants, as I said, they at the time of application, the documents of the applicants, the parents will be provided, and the visa is lodged. Now that was all about subclass 870. Now I will talk about the contributory temporary visa 173. Now subclass 173 is a temporary visa, and as I explained a little bit about the family balance test, this visa, in order to apply for this visa, the applicant, they must meet the family balance test. Just to reiterate, family balance test is where the applicants, half of the 50% of the family 50% of the children, they should be in Australia as Australian residents or permanent citizens. Now, 173 provides temporary residence in Australia for up to 2 years. Now, this is the first stage of the pathway that leads to permanent residency. This is the stage 1. So 870 is the stage 1. After I'm talking about subclass 173. So 173 is the first stage. After this stage is granted, this visa is granted, the applicants, they have 2 years to stay in Australia. Within the 2 years, they have to apply for the next stage, which is the permanent visa, subclass 143. Now, as I said, they must meet the family balance test. They also must meet the health and character criteria, and must be sponsored by a settled eligible child. Now, in this one, there is no assurance of support required at this stage, which means the temporary stage. And once this visa is granted, it comes with work rights. There is no bridging visa because this visa is lodged offshore. This cannot be lodged onshore unless there are certain requirements that you have to meet. Now, there is a very high application charge. As the name suggests, it's a contributory parent visa. So the applicants, they have to pay over $35,000 per applicant for the fee. And once the visa is granted, within the 2 years, they have to apply for the subclass 143, which is the permanent stage. Now, this visa provides permanent residency in Australia. There is no age requirement for this visa. And this is, again, at this stage also, they must meet the balance of family test. They must meet the health and character criteria, and also need to provide the assurance of support. There is no bridging visa if applied onshore without another visa. So those are the main requirements for contributory 173 and 143 visa. Now there is another contributory visa, which is an aged parent visa. The subclass is 864. Now this visa is for the parents who are above the age of 67, which means they must meet the retirement age, the retirement age at that time in Australia. So this is a permanent visa for older parents, and this application can be made onshore depending on what visa they are currently on in Australia, and whether that visa that they are on allows them to lodge this. If their current visa has a condition called no further stay, then they wouldn't be able to apply for this visa onshore unless exempted. In other situations, this visa can be lodged onshore. Again, they must meet the pension requirement, balance of family test, health and character criteria, and assurance of support. The fees for this visa are very, very high. They have the applicants, it's about 50,000 per applicant. Once the visa is lodged, the applicant gets a bridging visa A, and until the visa is finalized, they can stay in Australia on the bridging visa A. And if they want to travel overseas, they can apply for bridging visa B and travel. So 864 is basically for parents who are older in age and can stay, and can pay that high fee. However, for the aged parents who cannot pay the high visa application charge, there is another option of subclass 804. Now, I forgot to mention about the processing times for subclass 864. Now, subclass 864, the current processing times, if you look at the department's website is over 14 years, so 12 to 14 years. So, it's a very, very long time for parents to wait. But the good thing is that they get the bridging visa and they can continue to live in Australia on the bridging visa until the visa is, the decision is determined and finalized. Now, the second option for aged parent visa is subclass 804. In this subclass, the visa application charge is not that high. The applicants have to pay the primary application charge at the time of application, which is around 5,000 or so. And then, however, the negative or the con to this visa is that the processing times are over 30 years, which is technically, kind of very, very long for a person who is already 70 years old, taking 30 years. So at the time when the visa is granted, before that there is a second stage application charge, which is close to $2,000 at the moment. So that is required after 30 years when it's about to be granted. In this subclass as well, after the visa is launched, the applicants, they get a bridging visa A. They can continue to stay in Australia on the bridging visa, and and they can apply for bridging visa B if they wish to travel overseas. This visa can also be lodged while the applicants are onshore, again depending on whether their current visa has any conditions or not. So we need to double check, if there is a subclass, if there is a condition, no further stay on their visa, then they cannot apply from Australia. So technically, if the applicants are here in Australia on a visitor visa, then they can, and their visa doesn't have any, condition, then they can, and they meet the requirements such as family balance tests, income requirements, the character requirements and all, then they can definitely apply for the aged parent visa, either the contributory one or the non-contributory one. In both the cases, they will get the bridging visa A. Now, a lot of time people ask whether, the parents would be eligible to apply for Medicare. In most of the scenarios, they are not eligible unless they come from a country which has a reciprocal Medicare system with Australia. Now, there are only certain countries that have such, such agreement. For example, if they are residents of UK or some other European countries, then they do get that, Medicare facility here. However, if the parents are from India or from other South Asian countries, then the Medicare is not, available until the visa is granted. So they get the Medicare after the visa is granted. During the time when the visa is processing and they're waiting on their bridging visa, they have to take private insurance from their different providers, Bupa, Allianz, and all these other companies. So they have to take a health insurance to cover their risk. So just to give a quick overview, 870 subclass 870 does not require family balance test. This visa can be, can give you the option to stay here in Australia for 3 or 5 years. Obviously, the fee for 3 years is less than the 5-year option. It's currently, as we speak, is over 6,000 for a 3 years visa, and for 5 years visa, it's over 12,000 now. However, for the people who do not meet the family balance test, this is a good option for them to keep their parents here in Australia for a longer time. 143, which is the permanent stage from 173, is a permanent visa and requires a huge chunk as visa application charge, just like the 864 or 884 visa. However, 804 aged parent visa does not require the high does not require the applicants to pay close to $50,000, what is usually for 864. So a very good option for a lot of people who cannot pay that big fee, because this also gives them a bridging visa to stay here in Australia for a long time, and they can take their health cover from any provider. I think I have covered everything. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer. Um, Let me see if there's any questions. All right, so there's a question about the community worker points. So sorry, we are talking about parent visas today, and options for parents to stay here in Australia. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask about the parent visas, more than happy to reply. If not, yeah, you can contact us on the given numbers. We are also conducting a conclave session tomorrow, 12th of July 2025, at Novotel Perth, where we will be covering a lot of visa subclasses, like all of them technically, and other options, study and PR pathways and everything. So if you can register today and come over, join us, and you'll get the opportunity to learn and ask questions. So that's pretty much it from my end, unless someone has any questions. All right, so I think we can end the session here today. Thank you very, very much for joining. See you guys tomorrow.